are the Not Ready for E1 players. In the next half hour, we're going to make you a smarter fantasy football player and a much dumber person. Today on the show, we've got reactions to Monday Night Football, what you do with those Packers running backs, plus Stephania Bell on Week 10 injuries. Field Yates stopped by with some waiver wire picks and who's welcome to Dumpsville. But first, Secret Squirrel, today's show will be... Woo! So the Packers, right? They had an entire bye week to prepare Brett Hundley for a home start against a divisional rival. It was a disaster. 23 of Brett Hundley's passes were within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. He completed just 2 passes beyond 10 yards downfield. The run game seemingly had no direction. I mean, the whole thing was ugly. Look, we knew there was going to be a downgrade from Aaron Rodgers to, well, anyone. But a drop this big was every Wisconsinite's worst fear. Now to really terrify Wisconsin, look, this is the Packers offense with Aaron Rodgers, right? Totally mouth-watering. But now, here's the offense with Brett Hundley. Yeah. And frankly, that's probably being generous. Okay, yes, Hundley faced 2 tough defenses, but with a road game at Chicago and then Baltimore and Pittsburgh next up, doesn't get easier. Jordy Nelson no longer a must-start, right? He's a shaky wide receiver, too. And in fact, he's been passed in my wide receiver rest of the year rankings by Marvin Jones of the Lions, who, guess what, is the best wide receiver in fantasy on a points-per-game basis over the last 4 weeks. Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, they're now wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 territory. Hard to play receivers on an offense that can't or won't throw the ball down the field. And while Aaron Jones was looking like a true RB1 after last night, not so much. Like, he splits carries and actually had less snaps than Ty Montgomery, each of them only getting 5 runs apiece. Both now barely flex options on a stagnant offense, considering the tough run defenses coming up. It is a shocking fall for one of the NFL's best offenses, but the fact is this: no Packers are must-starts for me now.
Hey, Barry, you gonna eat all that cheese, my friend?
Does a bear poop in the woods?
Not if I eat that much cheese, I don't. Buzzing!
So the Buccaneers announced yesterday that Jameis Winston is going to miss the next few weeks with a shoulder injury. But listen, that just made official what we kind of instinctively knew, right? Winston should not be in your fantasy lineup. 4 points or fewer in 3 of his last 4 games. Many analysts, including me, thought Winston would take another step this year. And the truth is he has. Yeah, the problem is that step is onto the waiver wire. Winston, Doug Martin, Deshaun Jackson, O.J. Howard. Listen, there's not a strong case to be made that any of them should be in your lineup going forward, especially now that Ryan Fitzpatrick will be the starting quarterback. In the last 4 weeks, Doug Martin has seen his fantasy points drop from 15 to 10 to 8 to 0.7. Third straight week for Martin outside the top 25. In a week where there's a ton of teams on the bye, Martin now has just 5 receptions in his last 5 games. And on Sunday, we'll face a Jets defense that's 3rd best against running backs since week 5. Then that's going to be followed by 3 road games in a row, and then the Lions defense at the start of the fantasy playoffs in week 14. Like, no thank you. Also not thrilled on Deshaun Jackson, right? Always boomer. Do you know Jackson has just 1 100-yard game this year and just 2 touchdowns the entire season? Under 40 yards receiving in 3 of the last 4. He has just 2 receptions of at least 30 yards all season long. Like, that's what Deshaun Jackson does, but for whatever reason, they're not connecting big throws. Hard to see that improving with Fitzpatrick instead of Winston. So I have no issue dropping Deshaun Jackson in 10-team redraft leagues if you need the space. In fact, the only Buccaneers that are must-starts, and for me, must be on rosters in all leagues, Cameron Brate, tight end position so thin, he's still a low-end tight end one, and Mike Evans. And of course, Mike Evans was suspended on Monday. Barring a successful appeal, Evans is going to miss Sunday's game with the Jets. So, you know, tough times ahead for the Buccaneers offense. Did you say something, Daniel?
It's not me, Matthew. It's Jameis Winston. He won't shut up.
Yeah, Matthew Berry might be down on us now, but when I get back, we're going to get some W's.
You know, eating W's is not healthy. I suggest a tech-infused diet, anti-inflammatory foods, and magic water. I eat paste, and I still beat Vice in the Super Bowl.
With 4 more teams on bye this week, including quarterbacks Alex Smith, Carson Wentz, and Derek Carr, there can be a lot of action on the waiver wire at the quarterback position. So let's take a look at the best available quarterbacks with a classic fall game, bobbing for quarterbacks. In case you forgot how to play, my friend Daniel over there is going to dunk his head into a tub of water filled with apples, right? And the apples have quarterback names on them. Whichever names Daniel gets, I'll tell you if you should add them onto your roster. Daniel, get me the first apple. Daniel? This is taking longer than I expected. I'll just get started on my own, okay? The first quarterback off the waiver wire, Josh McCown. Look, McCown's had multiple touchdowns in 5 straight games. He's available in more than 60% of leagues, and now gets a decimated Bucs defense that allows the 7th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. The Jets offense, a great play this week. Wow, Daniel is really bad at this. All right, listen, if you can't get McCown, I've got 3 other quarterbacks for you. Jared Goff, Andy Dalton, Eli Manning. Goff, coming off his huge game last week, gets a banged-up Texans defense that allows the 4th most fantasy points for quarterbacks and just gave up 300 yards passing to Jacoby Brissett. Can't believe he hasn't come up with an apple yet. Andy Dalton is undeniably awful on Sunday. Remains a possible bye-week replacement against the Titans team that's allowed the 9th most touchdown passes on the year. Also helps, of course, that A.J. Green has avoided suspension. And finally, Eli Manning. Look, I get it. Hard to get excited about any part of the Giants, but at least 2 touchdown passes in 4 of his last 6. Only Seattle and Denver held him below that. And he plays the 49ers this week, who give him the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So, Daniel, who do you like off the waiver wire? Daniel, you got anything yet? Daniel? Daniel?
Hey, it's me, the bear of bad news. Get on my bear, I got a bad news. No need for the rim shot, Barry. That's because your co-host here, he's dead. That's the bad news.
So, like, what's the deal? Like, are you like a guy in a bear suit or just like an actual bear that's weirdly shaped?
Yeah, that's a great question, my friend. The mystery is part of the magic, but, you know, your co-host here, pal.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Well, what are you going to do? It's going to happen. That's a bummer. Anyone know CPR? Or have a suggestion for a new co-host?
I got this one, Barry.
I got Scott Tolzien, Matthew.
Yeah, we already moved on from that, Daniel, but hey, glad you're not dead. Coming up next, we tell you which injured players might miss Week 10. It's Show Me Where It Hurts with Stefania Bell. So you better stay tuned, or she'll send her injury minions after you. Hall of Famers Dan Marino and Warner ahead of him on the list. Wentz, the #1 quarterback in fantasy this year, despite being just QB 16 on draft day. Time now for Show Me Where It Hurts. We welcome in, of course, our injury analyst, Stefania Bell, and her injury minions, Fabrizio and Marcello. Hello, boys.
Such energy they bring.
Absolutely, Stefania. They're terrific. All right, let's get started. Des Bryant left the game early last week. Show me where it hurts.
Injured his ankle, and Jason Garrett said after the game that he thought that the injury was not serious, but we hear on Monday it's not only his ankle, it's also his knee. Now, Des said even though he was sore, he hopes to be able to play by the end of the week, so keep your eye on it. If he can practice, you know he'll go.
Yeah, certainly Terrence Williams would make a key pickup this week if you can grab him as well. He said his injury wasn't serious either. Chris Hogan off the bye. Last time we saw him, he left his game early. What do we know about the Patriots wide receiver?
And last time we saw him, he was wearing a sling after the game after injuring that right shoulder, went for an MRI. It sounded from the get-go that this could be a multiple-week injury, so I'm already expecting that we're not likely to see Chris Hogan this week.
Oh, that is tough, especially considering the Broncos are their opponent on Sunday. Charles Clay, the Buffalo Bills tight end, has missed a few weeks. Show me where it hurts on Charles Clay, and can we expect to see him soon?
We can. I think we can. We might even see him this weekend. Sean McDermott said it was realistic that he could play in Week 10. We know he's been recovering from an MCL injury. That's the ligament on the inside of the knee. Had surgery to address a meniscus tear. But even though he hasn't been practicing, we've seen him doing some work on the side, some nice video of him running, getting better. If he gets integrated to practice by late in the week, I think there's a good shot you see him.
Stefania, you and I have worked together every day for almost over a decade. I feel like the player I've asked you the most about is Jordan Reed.
I think so, and with good reason, right? Because he's somebody that I always have something to talk about, and the latest issue for him has been a hamstring injury. Remember when he was injured a week ago, Jay Gruden said on Monday that he didn't expect him to play. And when you hear a coach saying early in the week that a guy's not likely to go because of his hamstring, you start thinking maybe it won't just be this week. So as of right now, Gruden says he's improving, but he's day to day. If he's not practicing by the end of the week, I'd be concerned about his availability for this week as well.
Luckily, Vernon Davis has been terrific as a fill-in both in real football and in fantasy, a must-have if you have Reed on your roster. And finally, let's stay with the Redskins now. Jamison Crowder. Stefania, show me where it hurts.
And we'll stay with a hamstring injury. You know, obviously a big deal for a wide receiver. And Crowder shed some interesting light on what a hamstring does to a wide receiver. He said even though he feels pretty good when he gets out there, he doesn't feel like he can be explosive. He doesn't feel like he can really compete at a high level. That's why they held him out. We'll see if he can get that explosiveness back this week. And if he can, then they hope to have him in the lineup.
Yeah, certainly, because he coming off 2 weeks ago, he had that big game over 22 fantasy points there. So thank you very much, Stefania. Appreciate that.
Well, you know, let me thank you and commend your staff, because we saw a demonstration of why it's so important that everyone knows CPR, because it can save lives. A shout out to Strawman for bringing your co-host Daniel Dopp back.
Not all heroes wear capes, Stefania. Thank you very much. No doubt, Strawman. Saving lives. Tonight at midnight Eastern, check out SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt on ESPN. Center with SVP, also on the ESPN app. Coming up next, what do Selena Gomez, The Weeknd, and CJ Anderson of the Broncos all have in common? They're in Dumpsville. Stay tuned to see who you should break up with on your fantasy roster.
Sued on my behalf. They're really dumb, and I regret ever working with them.
Barry, Strawman, and Dopp won't stop until you get the results you want.
Seriously, they won't stop. They keep
Being honest about there, look, totally rough one there. I probably would have started Hilton. I get it with Lynch, but honestly, this is what I said yesterday, right? Hilton, so boom or bust. Tough schedule down the stretch for him, especially with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. I would consider trying to trade Hilton now while he can get maximum value off of Sunday's performance. As for Lynch, look, I see a workload increase for him coming in the coming weeks. I think he's still a legit mid to low tier RB2. Think about putting him into your lineup, depending on the rest of your roster.
Well, howdy, partner. Welcome to Dumpsville. Population U.
All right, looky here. Field Yates joins us now for Dumpsville, along with Fred, our fantasy research entertainment device. Fred, what's a good word?
Oh, fantastic, Matthew. Looking forward to helping you and Mr. Yates decide which players to drop from your fantasy teams.
Wow, that was genuinely sincere. Were you reprogrammed?
No, you idiot. It's called sarcasm. Here's sincerity. I hate my life, I despise you, and I tolerate Field, so let's just end this. Here's Ty Montgomery.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Field Yates, let's talk about Ty Montgomery. Played the, there we go. All right, there's Ty Montgomery now. Coming off the game last night, played the most snaps, but still just 41% of snaps. Is he welcome to Dumpsville?
Yeah, I think we're getting really close there, Matthew, but I'm going to move him over to friend zone only because he's a player that we at least know what his ceiling is. Like, in the beginning portion of the season, he was playing 95% of snaps with still 8 teams yet to go on a bye. I think Ty Montgomery stays barely in the friend zone.
I agree with you, especially because Brett Hundley doesn't seem to want to throw downfield. So what's he going to do? Dump it off. We know Montgomery, a nice pass catcher to the backfield. Played the most snaps of the running backs last night. See how that plays out. Come now, Will Fuller. What do we do with Will Fuller? Was a stud with Deshaun Watson.
I know, and I'm going to keep him in the friend zone. I mean, a few weeks ago, he was a star. He was a potential top 15 wide receiver the rest of the way. He had a season-high 8 targets, though, in Week 9, which was encouraging. Now, Tom Savage has just 1 career touchdown pass and nearly 150 attempts, and that's what Will Fuller does best. But again, with 4 teams on a bye over each of the next 2 weeks, I'm trusting that perhaps this offense finds ways to get incrementally better, and Will Fuller is still good enough for a big play every once in a while that he stays in the friend zone, but just barely.
I would agree with you as well. Seemed like Savage actually got a little bit better as that game. We did see Hopkins have a good game with him. I'm with you. Still need to keep him. Now, what about Wendell Smallwood?
Yeah, this one's pretty easy for me, Matthew. He's a third-string running back. Dumpsville. He's behind Jay Ajayi. He's behind LeGarrette Blount. They go on a bye this week. Heck, Corey Clement had 2 separate rushing touchdowns against the Broncos in Week 9. Smallwood played just 6 snaps. He was a nice fill-in earlier on in the season, but for me, welcome to Dumpsville.
Yeah, just 1 double-digit fantasy game this entire season on a bye this week, as you mentioned. That's Jay Ajayi's gig, so Smallwood, unfortunately, can easily be rostered. All right, who's next to Tariq Cohen.
Yeah, Tariq Cohen, so good at the beginning portion of the season, but he's dump mill for me, Matthew. This offense is completely ineffective right now. I mean, their passing game is basically non-existent, and he has 4 straight games with 1 or fewer catches. Like, this is supposed to be a pass-catching running back in an offense that runs to the running back. Well, Jordan Howard's getting all the carries. Tariq Cohen's barely a factor in the passing game. I think right now he's an easy dump sale candidate for me.
Just 6 touches in the last 2 games combined. I'm with you. Tariq Cohen doesn't need to be on your roster. Unless as a handcuff to Jordan Howard, that would be the only case for him. What about C.J. Anderson? Looks to be in a 3-headed running back by committee there in Denver now.
I almost want to keep him right where he is, like in between these 2 options, Matthew, but I'll go with friend zone just for the simple fact that, like, perhaps Denver with a roster that's still got a lot of pieces from its Super Bowl winning roster a few years ago. Find some metal, find some toughness, some wherewithal, and recommits itself to C.J. Anderson, who I think, when he gets the opportunities, is still the best back on that roster. But I don't love him for Week 10 because of that timeshare. I think he's going to be outside of my top 30 running backs going into this week.
I agree with that. Since the Broncos' Week 5, he's playing 46% of the team's snaps at running back, which is not ideal, but it's still half the snaps. To your point, they're not getting anything out of their passing game. They're going to have to turn it into the run game, and I'm with you. Just from a pure talent standpoint, C.J. Anderson strikes me as more talented than Jamal Charles or Devontae Booker at this point in their respective careers.
We saw things eye to eye right there. Very impressive.
Nice job. So thank you, Field, and thank you, Fred. Appreciate that.
And now you'll show your sincerity by putting me in a cold, dark basement with a bunch of puppets. Thanks a lot.
He's surly.
He's very surly. Time now for a blind resume. These 2 wide receivers average the same amount of fantasy points since week 2, except one is near 100% owned, the other still available in 74% of leagues. Who are they? Stay tuned for the answer, as well as our daily reminder to don't be this guy.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm Antonio. I'm just helping Andy and you move in together. So you can fill up with a big bowl of chunky mac soup. It's got 40% more meat, so you can be more committed to the situation.
Situation?
New Chunky Macs. We'll fill in while you fill up.
That tablet you wanted seemed pretty expensive. So I got you one no one's ever heard of.
Don't shop like everybody else. Shop eBay for the best deals on the best brands. eBay.
There are heroes among us. Not to make us feel smaller. To remind us what makes us great.
Justice League, rated PG-13, November 17th.
The modern man values craftsmanship, confidence, and hard work. At Joseph A. Bank, we create classic menswear tailored for the modern man, because looking good is a tradition that never goes out of style.
So, Verizon and Google have teamed up on the Pixel 2. It's a match made in tech heaven. It's like Verizon is the oil and Google is the balsamic.
No, actually, they separate into a suspension.
It's more like the Google Pixel 2 is the unlimited storage.
And Verizon is the best unlimited plan.
What if it's like H2 and O?
Yeah,
I had a feeling that would score with you guys. Good meeting.
When you really, really want the best, get the Pixel 2 for up to $300 off on Google's exclusive wireless partner, Verizon.
If you're fixing for a burger with all the fixins, you're fixing to get the new Farmhouse King. Flame grilled 100% beef topped with a fried egg, bacon, and crispy onions. The new Farmhouse King, only at Burger King.
As a Marine serving in Afghanistan, I conducted logistics patrols in some of the world's most dangerous places. When I came home, I was ready for a new mission. The Sport Clips Help a Hero Scholarship is helping me get a degree in electrical engineering. Help a Hero took a load off me and my family. To learn more about the Sport Clips Help a Hero Scholarship Program, visit sportclips.com. My name is Jacob Dietz, United States Marine, and I'm saluting you.
There are no shortcuts. Making the best tequila in the world is all about putting in the time. The way we've been doing it for 145 years. Tequila Herradura. Luck is earned.
Wrestling sexiest superstar, Ric Flair!
Wrestling was his love. Then it became a disease.
He got really wound up in it. He could have his fantasy world and his family on the side.
What if I told you his life was never an act?
I'm the best there is! Nate Jamar!
The Fantasy Show is presented by E-Trade. Don't get mad, Get E-Trade, the original place to invest online. And in part by Campbell's Chunky Max Soup. We'll fill in while you fill up.
Welcome back to the Fantasy Show. Before the break, we showed you two wide receivers putting up the same amount of fantasy points since week 2. One on the left, Robert Woods, one of the top waiver pickups this week. The one on the right, Jordy Nelson, who hasn't scored in the 3 weeks since Brett Hundley took over. Time for our daily reminder. Don't be this guy. Today's fantasy loser punishment comes from Chad in New York, Secret Squirrel. Chad had to score above an 800 on the SAT at a bar during the NHL playoffs, or he had to get a fat head of the league's winner to display on his bedroom wall for the year. Luckily, he scored a 930.
I just don't understand, Matthew.
Well, honestly, that's not a regulation SAT. SATs aren't being taken in a bar.
Was he trying to get into college?
I guess.
Take a look, college football fans. This is, as they say in Hamilton, the room where it happens. The second college